All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third Your Kids Next Read Author Talk event for 2026. We are very excited to have you with us and our special guest. Before we begin, though, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we meet today, wherever you may be located, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who have joined us, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Stories have been shared across this country for thousands of years, and we celebrate that history and tradition. I would also like to remind everyone that this event is being recorded and an edited version will be available to watch on YouTube in a few days' time, alongside our first two events with Katrina Nanastad and Tristan Banks, if you missed those. You are welcome to have your cameras on or off, depending on personal preference, but we do ask that you keep your audio on mute, please. I'm Allison Tait. I'm also known as A.L. Tait, and if we haven't met, I am a founder of Your Kids Next Read, co-host of the Your Kids Next Read podcast, as well as the author of 12 middle grade novels. You can find them all at allisontait.com. Tonight, we are also joined by author and team Your Kids Next Read member Alison Rushby, who is waving. She's very small, but she's there, and our tech guru Ra Gardner, who are both here to keep us all on track. But of course, the star of the show tonight is award-winning author Matt Stanton. You may be able to see him on your screen, who has sold more than 1 million books in Australia. It's a lot of books, Matt. And who is here tonight to talk about not just his very latest novel, Duck, Look Who's Talking, which he's going to wave because he's got a copy there. Beautiful, which is the first in a hilarious new series, but to give us a sneak preview of the second book as well, allegedly, I heard. Plus, he has a lot of thoughts about kids and reading and writing, a lot of thoughts. I don't know if you follow Matt on social media, but there are many, many thoughts to be had, and we're going to get into those as well. But first, even though he's perennially popular in the Your Kids Next Read community, his Funny Kid series is recommended all the time, and he probably needs no introduction, but he is going to get an official one anyway. So this is me with my best podcast voice giving you the Matt Stanton intro. Matt Stanton is a best-selling children's author and illustrator who has sold more than 1 million books in Australia. His middle grade series Funny Kid debuted as the #1 Australian kids book, and he has fans all around the world. He has 20 picture books to his name, including the award-winning Books That Drive Kids Crazy and Fart Monster series, and is the creator of the immensely popular graphic novel series The Odds and the Bored novels. Duck is his latest series. Matt lives on the south coast of New South Wales with his wife, best-selling author Beck Stanton, their 4 children. 4 children?
Four.
Four, and a giant dog. And we were just hearing before we sort of like let you all in, a family of magpies, but that is a whole nother story. Now, before I give Matt the keys to the Zoom for his author talk, I have a few questions for him. And this is your cue, everybody, to start thinking about your own questions and putting them in the chat now, because we've got some time set aside at the end for me to ask them for you. So make sure that if you've got a burning question, you pop it in the chat, and at the end, I'm going to go through and read as many as I possibly can, because I've got a feeling there's going to be quite a few of them. But because I'm hosting, I get to go first with the questions. So this is me doing this. Now, when we were sort of preparing for this event, I had to send Matt an email and say to him, just how many books do you have? Where is a list of them? When was the first one actually published? Because that list was not available. But I believe that his website is going to be updated with all of that information very, very soon. I'm very good like that, just pointing out the spots that might be missing. Now, your first picture book came out in 2012. There is a Monster Under My Bed Who Farts, written by Tim Miller. But it wasn't until 2017, and after another 8 picture books, that the first Funny Kid novel, written and illustrated by you, was published. I guess, Matt, I'm interested in what made you go from illustrating picture books to suddenly leaping into writing a full illustrated middle grade novel. I mean, did you not think maybe I'll just do a little picture book, author illustrated to start with, or what happened there?
Well, hey, thank you so much for tonight and everybody for coming. And thank you, Allison, for that lovely welcome and intro. Um, that's a great question. The answer is that I always wanted to be a writer. Writing was writing was the thing that I wrote down in my little school project when I was 7 about what I wanted to be when I grew up. I still have that project. And writing was where my heart was. Now, I always drew. I was always drawing cartoons and things like that, but I never really, to be honest, I never really thought I would use my drawing. I thought my drawing was just something that I did for my own creative enjoyment. I wanted to be a writer. I didn't know what sort of writer I wanted to be. And so uh, the road into picture books with Tim Miller, with those Fart Monster books and all of those kind of ones, kind of happened by accident. So Tim and I were both, we both, so I knew I wanted to be a writer. I couldn't work out how to get published. I was reading everything online about query letters and all of that sort of stuff and how to game the system. And I thought, well, there must be someone on the other side of the system. There must be people that work in publishing houses. How does this work? So I decided as a 19-year-old that I would try and get a job in publishing. Didn't matter what I was doing. I ended up opening the mail at HarperCollins, and that is where I met Tim. And so I was at HarperCollins then as a graphic designer eventually for 13 years, and Tim and I both had these kind of lofty big writing projects that we'd been working on, and I'd been working on, actually I brought it to show you, and I never show anybody this,
Oh, I'm so
but
excited.
this is the novel that I wrote. I self-published it. It's called Lioness. It's a
That's a
thriller
big book,
about
Matt.
terrorists. It's 100,000 words.
Oh,
That's what I was working on, and that's what I thought I was going to write. And then Tim and I were playing around, and we were sort of drawing and writing together, and we came up with this idea for a fart monster. And so we
which is a
kind of,
little bit different.
a little bit different. Well, that was kind of the point. It was really playful. It was really fun. It made us laugh. It tapped into the child in us, and um, so it's a really long way of answering your question, but the writing was always there for me. It was always what I wanted to do. And so Funny Kid is almost feels like me coming back on track. Um, but also those picture book years gave me this kind of gift of learning about how to tell stories visually and bring those two things together, which I've loved being able to do.
Do you know, I'm so happy to have been here tonight just for that one moment where you showed us that book
I
because
don't think you can buy it anymore. I
I
did
did not
self-publish it,
know
but yeah,
about
yeah.
that. Like we've all learned something new and exciting here today. I mean, not that I'm not here for all of the exciting moments with you, Matt, but that particularly really hit a high for me. Anyway, where were we? Funny Kid. So
Yes.
after Funny Kid, you have become like the busiest man in publishing with a minimum of two Funny Kid books a year plus other projects, including adding in junior fiction series like The Odds and Fluff, middle grade series, Board, et cetera, et cetera. And you're still illustrating as well, often on projects co-created with Beck. Are you someone who is just always working on something? And does everything that you come up with end up published?
Oh, definitely not.
Oh, good.
Um, so so yes to the first question. I'm always working on something. Absolutely not to the does everything I come up with get published. No, there's way more projects that have either been knocked back or we have kind of knocked back together after kind of developing them a bit than anything that I've published. Um, I I think what happened for me was that, as I said, I kind of stumbled into children's books a little bit accidentally. I knew I wanted to write, but I didn't know where I would land. But then in that process of, especially with those early picture books, I kind of hit the road and started visiting schools. and started to learn that whole side of what we do. And I became so inspired about writing for kids, that and the kind of I have a kind of urgency in me about that. I have a kind of like, oh, we've got to fight for this. You talked about before about how much I talk online, which made me sound very opinionated, which is true. Um, but I feel really passionate about this work, and it's not. I became a writer because I like telling stories. I am a writer because I believe in this work and I believe it's really important. And so there's a kind of desperation in me, I think, a bit to produce as much as I can, create as much as I can, try this idea, try that idea. And so yes, I'm always working on multiple projects and I like working that way. Um, but there are a lot of ideas that end up in the bin.
Okay, so I'm just going to come back to that a little bit. This is sort of a little bit of a tangent here, but you
Hmm.
mentioned that there are things that you develop and then you decide, go, they're gone and they're in the bin, they're gone.
Hmm.
Why do you decide that? Like, what point do you go, this is not going to work, and why does that happen?
So
Big question, I know.
no, no, great question. A whole host of different reasons. Sometimes, um, mostly, mostly it's about, um, oh, this is an idea um, that I've just had, like that I've like that's popped into my head. I've been excited about it. I've started to develop it, but is it gonna do the work um, of helping kids, especially reluctant readers? Is it going to do the work of helping them? Is it kind of, is it good enough to do that? It might be good enough an idea to exist, like for me to create it and for that to be enjoyable and rewarding. But I kind of set a slightly higher bar for myself than that. And it's I often joke that I made a really terrible business decision, which I don't actually think is a terrible business decision, but which is that I write books for kids that don't like books. Which is like business 101. You make a product for someone that wants the product. I make
Yeah,
books for kids that don't want them. But it pushes me because I get the kids who like reading anyway. But it makes me work hard and push hard to create something that might catch those kids who are in that spot in primary school where they're just like, oh, I'm not so sure.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Well, that makes sense, and that leads us neatly into Duck, Look Who's Talking, which I want to touch on a little bit. Like you're going to actually go into this a lot more with a little author talk in a minute, but we discussed this in episode 254 of the podcast. So I have a couple of questions I just want to talk, through to that. Um,
Mm.
it starts out as a graphic novel. It's got almost that comic strip style, and then it broadens out into more text. Look, we have a
Yeah.
demonstration model right here.
So it kind of opens up like this,
Yeah.
and then it,
And then it's got more text sort of as it goes along, but still with the comic strips
yeah.
sprinkled throughout. This is great. This is better than the podcast when we can actually have a demo of what we're talking about. So, um, did it start out that way for you, or was that something that developed as you wrote it? Because as we both like to discuss in school visits regularly, things can change in the edits, right?
Sure. Yeah. It definitely starts as story first for me. So it's the first the first work I'm doing, and I'll talk about this in a bit more detail in a bit, but is is there a story here that I want to tell and that works and that has opportunities for humor and feels fresh. So it starts as story first before I get to kind of form.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know it's going to have illustrations in it. Um, the 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 thing that was in my head with Duck was, so obviously I love graphic novels. I've created graphic novels. I think graphic novels are incredibly important for a whole host of different reasons. Um, but I also know that a lot of parents and teachers and kids um, can feel a little stuck in this kind of, often from the kids' perspective, often they're feeling pressured to like read a novel, and they're getting that pressure from multiple different sources, and so but the full page of text still feels intimidating, and so I'm always looking for ways to break those barriers down,
Yeah.
just to try to um, scaffold a way for kids to to feel more confident about setting out to read a novel. Like that's the I think a lot about those resistance points. Like what's happening for a kid in the library when they pick this up and they go, yeah, nah. Like
Too many
what's that?
words, not enough words.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, I thought, that a book like Duck, Look Who's Talking, that first one might take a really long time to effect, and I assumed the next one would be like at least a year away. But I was wrong, Matt Stanton, was I not? Because book two, Duck, When Nature Calls, is almost upon us. Now, I won't ask you too much about it at this point, but is Duck like the original Funny Kid? Like, can you see this series going for years and years?
So, yeah, so the second one's at the printers at the moment, and the third one, I've just finished the manuscript of the third one.
What?
So,
You're such an overachiever.
so two things. One, I create every series, or maybe with the exception of the odds, but not quite. So I create every series as a I'm I'm creating something for a group of kids. I'm creating something for real people who are going to read the book and respond to it. And so the question of how long do we do this for, this series, is a feels to me, this is weird to say, but it feels to me like a thing we're going to decide together.
Yeah,
So
right.
so I'm going to create, so I create series with an open end in my head. So if kids are loving this and this is working, we'll keep going.
Yeah,
Um, but then we kind of see, and I gauge feedback, and sometimes it's like, oh no, but three's good, three's enough, and let's try something new. And the other thought that I have is that just publishing schedules and even my schedules and kids' schedules don't line up
yeah,
at all. And so I've always tried to do books 6 months apart rather than a year apart if I can.
yeah.
I would like to do them closer together than that, but there's a few obstacles to that. Um,
Just the number of hours in the day as a starting point.
sure, sure. I just think that a kid that reads your book and then where they are in 6 months, let alone a year, like they're a different kid.
Yeah,
They're at a different stage. They're reading different things. They're interested in different things, and momentum can wane. And I think actually momentum is a tool we need to use. So I'm constantly trying to think about how to solve those problems.
it's one of the joys of Funny Kid, though, and it's one of the reasons that Your Kids Next Read, it's recommended so many times because it's often, like that series has been around for a while now. There are so many books, and when you've got that new crop of that age reader coming through, or that sort of interest reader coming through, everyone's like, mate, we got a treat for you. Here's 20 books, let's go, which I think is great. And it does take time to build that body of work. And as you say, the kids who are reading the first ones are now 19.
Yes, I had my first instance, or I think it was last year, of doing a signing at a bookstore, and this like adult, well, he looked like an adult, walked past and was like, "Oh, I used to read these when I was a kid," and I was like, "Oh, okay, we're there, right?"
I'm old. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. So, switching gears slightly, what's
Hmm.
your best writing tip for kids? Like, if they're wanting to write their own things, what is your number one writing tip, Matt Stanton?
I think I want to encourage kids to keep it fun.
Mm,
So um, obviously they will write for school, but if they're showing an interest in writing, if they kind of we can very quickly kind of load pressure onto kids, and I think as soon as it stops being a fun creative outlet, something that they're really enjoying, then we'll kill it, like we'll kill the enthusiasm. And so Um, so often, often a kid will, especially in primary school, might really like writing, um, but they're never finishing anything. They're
Mm,
starting things and then they get another idea, and so they start something else. And I'm always really hesitant to kind of speak into that very much. I think that's fine. I think like when you're a kid, like just follow. You don't have to turn this into work yet.
right.
Just enjoy it. Follow your interest. Try this genre. Try that genre. And so, um, I think that's excuse me. That's my primary tip that I give to kids is like keep, keep it as play for as long as you can. And then the kid themselves will become motivated at a certain point to go, I never finish anything, and I'd really like to finish something now. I need some tools for how to finish it. Like that's great. That's intrinsic motivation. That's good. But when we come in as adults, as parents or teachers, and go like, well, let's put a structure around this, and let's, I think that's tricky territory. So I'd like to encourage kids to keep it as play.
Okay, that sounds great. Now, you are going to be giving a keynote speech at Mantle Conference in, I think,
Hmm.
October. Is it October,
I
September?
think
Some,
so,
yeah,
yes.
something like that. Like check your schedule.
Yeah.
Um, Titled "Developing a Reading Habit in Children." I'm just wondering if you can give us a couple of little inside tips there, of the sorts of tips that you give us your top. Have you got three? Give
I
us your
don't
top three
have
tips from that speech.
I don't have this talk written yet.
Of course not.
So I have, but I titled it that because that's something I'm really interested in at the moment, and I'm banking on by October I've really formed up some structured thoughts.
It's going to be great.
Where my interest is um we talk a lot about how to get kids reading, how to get the right book into their hands, how to follow their interest and, and give them something that if they're interested in surfing, find them a book about surfing. Um, and I think that's all super, super valid and very helpful. And I talk about that a lot. But I think there's another step that I'm interested in, which is kids that can work. A kid can read that book that they love and then put it down and go, great, I enjoyed that book. And not necessarily go, I'll go find another book. And so I think there's some really interesting stuff to think about around habit and and kind of how many positive reading experiences does it take for a kid to go, oh, reading is something I do for fun. That's something
Yeah,
I enjoy to do. And so I'm really interested in series there. I'm really interested in us increasing the quality of our series, if I can say that. So that because I think actually series are incredibly powerful. I got hooked on reading the Hardy Boys.
yeah,
And because I read one, I enjoyed it. I read 50. And then by the time I was sick of the Hardy Boys, I was like, oh, well, but reading is something I do now.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so I'm really interested in that space. And I think libraries have an incredibly powerful role in that. I think bookmakers
definitely.
have an incredibly power and publishers have a really important role. So yeah, that's habit. How do we help kids to grow, not just have a positive reading experience, but grow a reading habit? That's what
Megan Daly and Alison Rushby and I have many, many things to say on
I
that. It's
bet you do.
part of
Yeah.
that. It's part of what underpins the Your Next Read series as a
Yeah.
starting point. Like it's all the things. I think people who are interested in this space are most definitely thinking all the time about different ways. And as you say, that habit is
Mm.
really, really important. That will to read is really, really important. Um, I'm interested in what point you realized that simply writing great books wasn't enough, that if you wanted to make a difference in this kids and reading space, you had to kind of come out from behind the page and
Mm.
rant on social media or whatever, whichever way you like to put it, actively advocate, shall we say that?
Yeah.
Was there like a light bulb moment that made you go, it's not enough just to put the words on the page. I need to take the words, out into the discussion.
I think um I think I've always seen this, and possibly because I came into kids' books almost accidentally. Um, I've always seen this as really relational,
Yeah.
and that um, I don't like. I am an artist. I I'm an artist, but I'm also really intentionally creating something for someone. And
Mm,
so I feel quite passionate about that. I feel quite passionate, not so much that like I've written a book and you should read it, but like uh, I'm trying to reach. I'm really earnestly trying to reach kids, and and I feel really driven about that. And
yeah.
so that comes out in other ways, like ranting on social media. Um, but because lots of I'm the thing that got me talking more actively on social media was conversations with like teacher librarian after teacher librarian where the conversation kind of ended with this for kids to develop a love of reading, it relies on parents to value it too.
Yeah.
And a TL can do incredible work up until a certain point,
Yeah.
but they're not in the home.
Yeah.
And um, so I rethought of my social media channels as my audience is parents.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much I reach parents. That's up to Mark Zuckerberg and whoever else. Um, but that's who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
I'm trying to encourage and inspire parents to value reading in the home,
Yeah.
um, because I think that is a huge variable.
Yeah. And it's a huge part of it. You have to
Mm.
get beyond that front door
Mm.
to be able to make a difference, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm with you. All right. Now we've gone very serious there. Did you see us? We were into our active advocating there. I'm very proud of us. But we're now going to hand over to Matt, who is going to give us some deeper insights into his new series, Duck. So settle in and enjoy.
Thank you. I'm gonna share my screen here. Can you see a duck book?
Yes.
Excellent.
Woohoo.
Wonderful. Um, so, uh, Duck is a character from the Funny Kid series. And he's introduced in the very first Funny Kid book um, as a duck that follows Max. That's the protagonist of Funny Kid. Follows him around. Um, and to be honest, when I was creating the very first Funny Kid book, I just thought of Duck as a source of comic relief, really, like as a kind of just as a way of making quite slapstick sort of jokes. He's chasing Max around through most of the first book. Um, but as I started to write Duck, and as kids started to read the Funny Kid books, Duck was this kind of recurring conversation. So this is the Funny Kid series so far. I'm pretty sure I've got everything there. And so Duck is in almost all of them. There's one, the Funny Kid Snowballs, he doesn't turn up in because I couldn't work out a legitimate way to get Duck to the snow. But Duck is there kind of in all of the books, and he became this character that people really loved. So I often ask kids if I meet them and they read the series, who's your favorite character, which is your favorite book, and Duck would come up a lot. And the other part of the thing that would come up a lot was people would say, "Oh, you should give Duck his own series." And that conversation, so Funny Kid, I've been doing Funny Kid for 9 years. Um, that kind of idea of, oh, you should give Duck his own series, had come up multiple times. Um, and I was kind of fascinated by how that sounds like a really simple thing to do, but as a writer, that's actually really hard. And so there were a few problems that when people would say, "Oh, make a duck book," uh, I would just see the problems in my head, and I would kind of go, until I can work out how to solve these problems, then I can't really find a way to do this. So those problems are that Duck would need a new job. Okay, so um, when I create characters, and particularly in Funny Kid, where I've created this cast, so there's five kids plus Duck, and I think of Funny Kid like a sitcom, like I'm writing a sitcom, and so I've got this kind of set cast. They all play really deliberate roles, and so it's like a set of ingredients in a recipe. Different characters are designed to react against other characters, and so you get natural conflict. I can throw a situation at them. I know how Abby will respond. I know how Pip will respond, and so Duck is designed as a sidekick character, effectively, but to give him his own series would be to make him the protagonist, um, which I didn't design him to do. And so it's not kind of as simple for me as like I'll just start writing a Duck story, because a lot of the humor that we find in Duck, for example, is in his reaction to Max. He is responding to other things that are happening, and so I couldn't kind of conceive of him originally as a protagonist. So that was the first problem. The next problem was about the world. So obviously, if I was going to create a Duck series, then it would need to line up with the Funny Kid world that I created. And this was something I really learnt about while writing, how important world building is and how you're doing it all the time, whether you realize it or not. And so I really encountered this when I was writing the second Funny Kid book, and I started doing things in that story uh, that didn't really work because I'd made decisions about the world, about how realistic the world is, for example, in the first book, that I then can't break in the second book. So even though it's all set in the town of Red Hill, it's pretty much a cartoon version of a town. As the writer, I have put rules into that world that I can't break. So if I'm going to create a world for Dark that sits within the Funny Kid universe, then I've got to come up with a world that still works with my Funny Kid world. When I'm talking in schools, I show them this slide, and we have a chat about, like, okay, so here's three different animal movies with totally different animal worlds in them, and so from this, excuse me, as a spectrum from Zootopia, where we've got um, animals behaving like humans, wearing clothes, walking around on two legs, they have jobs, through to Finding Nemo, where the animals are bound by the rules that um, that their species allows them to do. So Nemo can't jump out of the water and jump on a jet ski and hoon away, but that could happen in Zootopia. Madagascar sits somewhere in between, where the animals still mostly behave like animals until they wear snorkels. So so animal worlds have really distinct rules, and I would need to come up with a world that made sense, that gave me a good story, but also made sense within the Funny Kid world. And then the third problem that I would have to solve was that my duck doesn't talk. So because one of the rules of my world is that it's pretty much the real world, and so animals don't talk to humans. Now, that is a source of comedy in the Funny Kid books, because Max always thinks he knows what Duck is saying, and we as the reader have a pretty strong sense of whether Max is getting it right or wrong. So there's a sense that Duck has a lot going on in his head, but we never really know what it is. We only know Max's interpretation of it. And so when we think about writing and we think about voice, I actually didn't have a voice for Duck. And so I would have to kind of solve these problems. And so the idea of a Duck series or book sat on the back burner for a really long time because I didn't have an answer. We moved to a little town far south coast of New South Wales 2 years ago. And I've told this story before. I'll do the quick version. There were a group of magpies, as we were just discussing. I didn't really like magpies. I'd been swooped a lot as a kid, not keen on them. But they lived at our house before we moved in, and they watched us move in. And we've become friends with this family of magpies. They walk into our house all the time. And I realized I started to notice moving to the country as we had done just how many animals were all around us. And I started to imagine that, okay, we don't know what they are saying, but like my dog has a pretty good understanding of what I'm saying. What if they can understand us, but we've never bothered to learn their languages? Actually, we don't pay a lot of attention to them. We think of our town as our town, but actually, we share a town with all the animals that live here. We share a home with the animals that live here. And so, as I started to notice the animals around me here, I started to get a sense of a world of animals, and I started to think about, well, hang on, not just duck. There would be a whole community of animals that live in Red Hill, where Funny Kid is set, that I've ignored, just as I ignore them a lot in my real life. And so I did this kind of gentle deep dive into noticing the animals around me and then thinking about the animals that were both periphery characters in the Funny Kid series, but also would just be there and that I've not thought about before. And so this kind of world of animals started to uh, come together. This I just like this slide. This shows where I live, but I didn't make this joke, but I like it a lot. Um, People often ask me if I where illustrating fits in my process. Do I write first? Do I draw first? I start drawing at the point that I think I have an idea. And I use drawing to create and explore character. So while I will write the manuscript before I will illustrate the manuscript, I am writing usually with both some kind of illustrations done and some cover concepts done. So um, I worked for 13 years or almost 13 years as a book designer and an art director. So I do my own cover design, which is pretty rare. Um, and so I often do cover mock-ups for myself before I start writing. So I have a sense of what I'm creating. It just helps me. It's just part of my process. So I started drawing these characters and starting to create and think about these characters. I just want to make sure I'm watching the clock.
I'm watching the
Um,
clock. Don't worry.
okay, cool.
We started a little bit late, so you've got a little, I'm allowing you a little bit of extra time.
Thank you. Um, this is the original Garfield comic strip. And I loved comic strips, newspaper comic strips, when I was growing up. I loved the shared newspaper moment, the tear it apart, share the comics page, who gets to read it. All I loved that kind of moment, and I am sad that that doesn't really exist for my kids, or not easily anyway. Um, and so I'd thought a lot about the three-paneled kind of comic strip because I was looking for a way, once I had kind of created the characters and then and then written a story, of trying to think about a fresh way of including illustrations in the book. I I react a little bit to books that feel like they're trying to not be books. So when you open a kind of junior fiction title and it's so loud and it's so in your face and you don't know where to look, which I mean, as a designer, if you don't know where to look, that's a problem. But even so, they're so busy and so stimulating because we've decided that kids are hyperactive and we need to kind of entertain them in every space. I feel like sometimes we lose the sense of what a book is.
Mm.
And so I'm really keen that my books, my novels, even though they will have illustrations, feel like novels. So I was looking for a fresh way of using illustration, and I was thinking about these three panel comic strips. That's the original Snoopy, which I don't think is a particularly good comic, but it's that's the very first Snoopy comic.
Wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Snoopy looks really kind of little and cute,
Yeah.
not sarcastic at all.
No. One of the things that I love about these three paneled strips is that they are the skeletons of storytelling that we would explore in primary school. So, a three-paneled strip very clearly is a beginning, a middle, and an end, or an introduction, a problem, and a conclusion. Um, it has characters and it has a setting, and it's all there in three boxes. And I love the economy of that. I love the designer in me loves the creative restriction of the kind of like you need to tell a joke within three boxes. You need to tell a story within three boxes. So I do a lot of this with students in schools now where we build these three panel strips because they are building story. They are learning the mechanics of story in a really stripped down kind of way. So I started creating these strips myself because one of the things that was in my head, I don't know if you've seen it, is Creature Comforts, which is an old it's the guys that made Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run, and it was before all of that.
Yep.
Um, Aardman Animation, they do these little. You can find them on YouTube. These little animal interviews about animal perspectives on the world, and that was kind of what I was trying to capture. I was trying to capture this, like, what does the town look like to animals? What do humans look like to animals? And so these little comic strips became a kind of little device for doing that and trying to craft these little jokes. Now, I made a bit of a mistake for myself, which is that I was like, I like this a lot. I should do one on every page, um, which I have done. But that means there's 170 of them in this one, and then there's 200 in the next book and I've had to had to come up with because they're all individual jokes. Like it's not I'm not just illustrating what's happening in the text. So that was a challenge, but a fun one. Um, so I'll skip through those, but that's how it then looks on the page. So what I wanted to do, I'd been watching the way that my 5-year-old or 4-year-old at the time would read Dogman. So she was still learning to read, but she likes the idea of reading like her older siblings, and so she would flick through and just kind of just visually decode. And I loved the idea that if I could do it well enough, then a younger kid could go through and they would just read comic strips.
Mm.
And then they might get curious, that whole idea of trying to hook kids in and draw kids in. They might get curious about what's happening in this text in between this strip and this strip. And so that's that invitation to start reading. And my hope always is that a kid starts reading one of my books and then gets surprised at how far they've gotten through. Um, the last thing to show you was I thought I'd show you a little bit of the cover development process
Great.
because I showed this to a friend who isn't in books at all. And he was like, yeah, that cover's great. It's pretty obvious. Like you've got a book about a duck, so you called it Duck and you put a duck on it. Well done. Cover design award for you. But I thought I would show you the process because and I'll just add a whole bunch up here. But this is the stripped down version of what I was exploring. Like there's probably 10 concepts in between each of these stages, but I've picked like the key ones.
Why?
Um, because the cover design process for me is also about the kind of the concept. I'm trying to work out what it is that I'm making. And so you can see there's lots of different titles there. It's different illustration styles, different typography. I use this actually when I'm visiting schools as a way of talking to kids about revision and editing,
Mm.
because it's hard to show that sometimes with your words, but it's kind of easy to show the evolution of an idea. And so yes, we ended up somewhere really obvious. Um, but we tried a lot of things on the way, um, which I really enjoy that part of the process. Um, and then what I'm trying to set up is then how to make it a series. So that's the next one that'll come out later in the year, and then that's the next Funny Kid. But yeah, that was James Patterson has a quote which I really like about the job of a cover, which is, "I see it, I want it."
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to create that response in the reader who you think would enjoy the book, which is that's important. It's not You're not trying to do that for everyone. You're trying to do that for the people that would enjoy your book. Yeah,
I
that's
found
kind of
that so interesting, like the kind of distillation of that idea down to that, very, I mean, it's a really eye-catching. There's some comments in the chat here from people about how much they love the cover. And I remember when it arrived, in the book mail, it was just like, I think the simplicity, the design of it just made you go, oh. And I knew immediately it was a Matt Stanton book, without even having to but we talked about the fact that I think that you look like all of your drawings. So let's not talk about that.
I
Um,
have
but
that messed with
yeah,
my head. Yeah.
yeah, that's so interesting. I know all the things I do to mess with your head. I think that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I
No
think,
worries.
loved seeing that. It's brilliant. Um, it's time for the questions. All right. So
Okay.
Matt is going to get ready to duck. See what I
Uh,
did there? Because the questions are coming. I know they're laughing. People are laughing at that joke, man. I'll just have you know that. I'm going to read out as many as I can. So we shall go forth into the night with the questions. And Marco is first in with the classic first question. How do you come up with story ideas, Matt Stanton, in a very short answer?
yes.
Because it's a long
Done.
answer, right?
Yeah. Um, Great question. I come up with ideas all the time. What I'm looking for most of the time are series ideas. And then once I have a series that I'm working on, I'm looking for a quite tight range of ideas that work within that world. So it depends which sort of stage I'm in. Am I trying to come up with a new series, or am I trying to come up with a story idea within the series? If it's a story idea within the series, then like cooking, I have a set of ingredients on the bench and I'm working out how to put them together.
Do you like journal? Are you one of those people like Katrina Nanastad showed us her journals, which were like works of art, a
I
little,
note taking to my
things and
phone like
yeah,
crazy, but that's a mess.
yeah. No, that's kind of
No,
how
I
I
wish
work
I
as well.
did lovely. Her
I
journals
know,
are
me, I know.
beautiful.
I know things to show, a bit
Yeah.
nice, wouldn't it? Um, Sue says, you are so funny. All right. So just
Oh,
from that point, um, where do you get your ideas from, which we've just covered? But what advice do you want to share with people trying to write humorous stories specifically?
that's a great question. And I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and because all of my books are designed to be funny in some way, different ways, like the humor is supposed to be slightly different in different books series. um I think my kind of top tip, or the thing that I find the most helpful for me, is that idea that humor comes from character rather than being a gag.
Mm,
So if I've just got two vanilla characters and I'm trying to make them funny, it's really hard and the humor doesn't work and it feels forced. If I can create two characters that have this kind of natural conflict together, like they don't fit together properly, but they're always forced together, the humor that comes out of that quite organically is a lot more kind of fresh. There's a host of books you can read about this. Get in like books about sitcom writers' rooms and things like that, which are really helpful.
okay. Do you have a list for us? Maybe I'll ask you. Maybe I'll get you to send us a
I didn't
few.
even have a list of my own books.
Well, that's true. Well, maybe you can send me a few
Yeah.
title
Okay.
suggestions and I'll share those somewhere useful so that people
Okay.
can find them. Maybe on your website. Why don't we do that?
Yes.
Um, Levi would like to know how long it takes to write a book.
Oh, thanks, Levi. Um, depends on the book. And the first one in the series takes way longer because of
Mm.
all that stuff about building the world and things like that. So this one took about 2 years. I was doing other books as well, but like a 2 year process. Um, Whereas the second one took about 4 months, and then the third one I wrote it in a month. I'll illustrate it in about 6 weeks. Um, so yeah.
So you will have one out every 3 months at the rate you go. Um, will any other characters, this is from Andrea, will any other characters from Funny Kid get their own book or series? Are we just going to line up a whole Funny Kid universe?
I don't know. I don't know. It's similar to the issues that I said before about Duck. Like that comes into play with other characters as well.
Mm.
Um, I Sometimes this really doesn't work. There's a lot of like if you start going down the line of thinking about spin-offs, like do you remember that Joey series that they
Yeah,
tried to make off Friends? Like it
let's not.
doesn't work. And
Let's not.
so uh I'm very aware of that. And so until I can get it to work in my head, it's not like everyone gets a series. That doesn't work like that.
All right. Steffi would like to know which authors and illustrators inspire you, apart from A.L. Tate, of course.
Yeah, yeah. Goes without saying. Um, oh, that's a great question. Lots of people inspire me. I think as a kid it was Morris Gleitzman. It was Misery Guts. It was the first chapter of Misery Guts. Like that's just blew my mind. Uh, Painting the fish and chip shop orange. Um, uh, since then, it's lots of things. I read really widely. I don't read kids' books unless I'm reading them to my kids, in which case
Mm,
they chose them. And I kind of don't do that for a couple of reasons. One, because I spend all my headspace in there and it feels like work. But also, um, I get really worried about like subconsciously
mm,
someone's idea. Yeah, anyway.
yeah,
So I don't read a lot of current kids' books. The exception to that is Showerland series by Nat Amor and Mega Rich Guinea Pigs by Kate and Joel Temple.
yeah.
Um, and they're because my kids chose them and we've loved them. So illustration wise, Bill Watterson, Calvin and Hobbes, uh, Charles Schultz for Peanuts.
Yeah,
Yeah, all of those. Just
fantastic. Now, Brooke asked whether you do author visits for primary schools and how to book, and Ra has jumped in there beautifully with a link to Matt's profile at Speakers Inc. If you are interested in, I know how organized we are. If
amazing.
you
Thank you.
are interested in having a look at Matt coming to your school, check out that link in the chat, Speakers Inc., and you'll be able to find out all the details. Now, Stephanie has said, thanks, Matt. I love your books. If you are passionate about a manuscript, and I think this goes back to your enormous novel, if you are passionate about a manuscript and want to get it out into the world, would you suggest self-publishing? And she says who with, but for me, self-publishing is about doing it yourself.
So I think, and this is my kind of stocks standard answer to anyone that asks me about like, I've got an idea for a book. What should I do? How should I send it to publishers? My answer is, I think it's really helpful to dig pretty deep thinking about why
Mm,
you want to publish. Because there's lots of very different reasons, and there are now lots of very good options in lots of different directions. And it kind of depends on why you're doing this to help you choose the most appropriate one.
yep.
So I think self-publishing is incredibly helpful and appropriate for a bunch of those answers. So I self-published this because um, I'd worked on it for 7 years and I was really proud of it and I was really happy with it. But I also had decided at that point that I did not want to write an adult thriller every year and start down that. That was not the career I wanted to build.
Yeah.
Stuff had started to happen with kids' books. I was really feeling inspired by that. But I couldn't, I'd done so much work on it and it was finished, and I couldn't quite bear the idea of it just sitting in a drawer.
Yeah.
And so I self-published it, not to kind of take over the world, but because for me it needed to exist.
Okay.
And I've got about 10 of them and they sit in my cupboard and that's it. That's all right.
And that's a
Um,
good as good a reason as any, right?
and I think self-publishing
Yeah.
is great for that. If you
Yeah.
want to make the book, you can do that in a way that a decade ago you couldn't, or a
Yeah.
bit longer.
Okay. Sian would like to know, as a teacher librarian, Sian met you at Sydney Writers Festival and was very excited. As a teacher librarian, which one of your books would you recommend to readers to introduce you as an author? And what is your favorite part of it? Which book would you choose to sum yourself up as an author?
That's a
That's a hard
great and
question.
very hard
That's a
question.
really hard question.
It depends entirely on the kid. So, so each of the series is trying to reach kids at a slightly different stage or who are looking for something slightly different. And so it would only come out of a conversation with a kid, which teacher librarians are excellent at. Um, Funny Kid is the one that's got the biggest range in terms of if they like it, they can hang out there for ages. There's 15 of them.
Yeah.
Um, most of my other series are trilogies, not, but they're trilogies, but something that I've tried to do, and the odds is the exception, which is why I mentioned that before. Um, I've deliberately written them so that you can pick up any of them. You don't have to read them in order. Because again, trying to kind of pull barriers down, barriers of entry for kids.
Yeah.
I don't want a kid to go, oh, book one is out at the library, and so I'm not going to pick up book two.
Yeah.
If they're interested in book two, I want them to be able to read book two. Um, so in that sense, following their interests, they're all kind of they move up in age. So Fluff and the Odds sit at younger. Um, Funny Kid and Duck sit kind of in the middle. Board sits a little bit older, and most of that you can tell just by flicking through and looking at the balance of illustration to text. I'm reducing the illustration component the older they get. So.
Okay, Amelia would like to know, what are your tips for helping kids develop their drawings into a story? We've only got a few more minutes, so I'll only ask a few more questions. I'm just letting you know that just so that we can keep the,
Yeah, sure. I think the comic strip that those three panels are really helpful. Giving kids three boxes and saying we need to introduce a character and a setting in the first one, we need a problem to happen to them in the second one, and we need to solve it in a surprising way in the third one. Kids really respond to that and find that really stimulating. And then if that's working, they just add boxes and they just keep going.
yeah,
I think that's quite a fun way to do it.
absolutely. I'm going to ask you this one because this is a question that I keep asking. Amanda would like to know, will the Magpie family ever make it to a book, Matt?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. If they keep coming inside the house. Um, yeah, I don't know. It hasn't, I don't have an idea yet, but maybe.
Maybe. Charlie would like to know about your process and preference for working with editors. Are you someone who works closely with an editor, or are you someone who presents the manuscript and says, it's perfect the way it is?
Oh, no, not that one. I really, really value working with editors. And I, I'm quite, I really respect what they bring to the process. And like a great editor is not trying to change the way that you write. A great editor is trying to help your voice come through clearer. And um, And so I love working with editors. So I work with editors through HarperCollins, through the publishing house that I work with. I have different editors on different series, um, and that's helpful too, because sometimes they're coming through at the same time. But I really, my risk is that I'm too deferential to the editor, where I'm like, if you think so, if you say so, yes, tick, tick, tick. So I should probably push back a little bit more, but I really value that work.
Fantastic. Um, Neil or Niall via Sharon says, when is Fastlane coming out, please? A big fan. What
Oh,
date is it?
wonderful. October, I think. It's at
Okay.
the end of the year. So
Okay.
it'll be on if you look it up on the HarperCollins website, it'll give you the exact date, or any bookseller website. Um, it's October, I think. We do one kind of in the lead up to Christmas every year.
Okay. And Dan says, will you continue with the Bored series? The first book made me smile and made me sad too. It was great. Bored is actually a personal favorite of mine as well, that series. I think it was book three. Was that the one with the house next to when they made the
Mm,
little, yeah, I
yeah.
loved that. That was great.
Oh, thank you. I love that series. I would like to. My original plan had been to do six, so each kid in that street would all get a book. Um, I might come back to it. I would like to. I get asked about it a lot. So, yes, I will keep thinking about it. I don't have any, there's no plans at the moment. We decided to kind of leave it at three for now, but yeah, I would like to come back to it. My
Fantastic.
suspicion is that I got the title wrong on that series.
Ah,
I think the
okay.
title is wrong.
Because
So
it's bored.
yeah, it's too negative and the stories themselves aren't negative. So
No.
I, yeah, that's
Okay.
that's where my head is at on that sort of thing.
Okay, so Ra has come to the rescue. Funny Kid Fastlane will be out on the 27th of October,
Mhm.
2026. This
Thank
is
you.
why we keep her around. She does great work. And
Thank
I've got
you.
one last question for you. Last question of the evening. Elodie asks, will Funny Kid end? It's like a good last
Would you
question,
like it
right?
to? Um,
Never.
Thank you. No, that's a great question. I don't know. I mean, sure, eventually, I guess. Uh, um,
Will he just not be funny anymore or what?
I, um, I, I mean, those characters don't age. Like, I can
Mm,
never give Max a birthday. Like, he can't,
mm,
he's always going to be 11. And so I've created it so that no, it doesn't end.
right.
I just get to
Goes
keep
on
creating
forever.
stories.
Yeah.
I guess eventually, I don't know. I have no plans. I love writing it. If
We're
kids
just
keep
gonna
reading it, I keep going.
we're just going to keep going forever and ever.
Yeah.
We, however, are not going to keep going forever and ever because we have to let people go to bed. Otherwise, we could sit here all night. So that's all the questions we have time for. We are going to, first of all, I'm going to say this. I hope you've all enjoyed this wonderful author talk because I certainly have, learning more about Matt Stanton and his new Duck series and all of the other little insights that we have had here. So, Duck is obviously out in all good bookshops everywhere and online if you haven't already picked yourself up a copy. So, fairy claps all round to Matt for that. Thank you all so much for coming along. Don't forget we have a weekly podcast. There is actually a full interview with Matt in what did I say? 254, episode 254 of the podcast where we took a real deep dive into Duck, so to speak. But this was actually in some ways better because you got to see what he was talking about, whereas on the podcast you could only hear it. So we have the weekly podcast. We also have a newsletter, various other bits and pieces. You can find all of it at yourkidsnextread.com.au. You can find all of Matt's stuff at mattstanton.net, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, .net.
Yeah.
So good night. Thank you so much for coming. We will see you next time. I'm not 100% sure when the next one will be, but it will be exciting. So I hope you are all geared up and ready for that as well. Duck dive, very funny. I know I'm funny. I have my moments. Tell my children I'm funny. Anyone, don't mind who it is. Thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you. Thanks so much.